Well, good morning, everyone. I believe everybody has entered our webinar today. My name is Krista Ross. I'm CEO at the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. Our speaker today is Matt Sims. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that we are going to be recording today's webinar to share it with those who are not able to be with us today, and we'll be sharing it on our social media as well for our members. And as we go through the webinar, I know that you may have some questions or some more detailed information that you'd like to request from Matt. And so you can either send those to me directly or through the chat to the group, and we'll be having a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So again, thanks for joining us today. I'm happy to introduce Matt Sims with Symplicity Designs and SimplyWorks. Matt and I have known each other for a number of years now. The company is a great chamber member. And not only that, they have worked with us previously on our strategic plan. They provided workshops and training to our members on a regular basis pre-COVID, and during COVID, they've been providing those services as well. And they've just been a great resource to our chamber members. They are also in the business of growing their business. And Matt's going to talk to us today about scaling an organization, but he's also going to talk to us from his perspective, because he has grown and been involved with growing 9 businesses throughout his career, and probably many more to come. So he can talk about his experience helping clients, but also his own personal experience. He studied at UNB and got his BA and his BEd, his MA at Wilfrid Laurier University. He's taken a bit of a hiatus from his PhD studies because he's working really hard to grow Symplicity Designs and SimplyWorks. And he really loves working with clients to help them shift their organizational paradigms. He's really at the point in his career where helping small businesses is what gets him out of bed every morning and what motivates him to keep going. So Matt, without any further ado, I'm going to turn the session over to you. And folks, remember to put questions in the Q&A, and we'll be having a chance to ask those questions at the end of Matt's presentation. So thanks, Matt. Over to you.
Thank you, Krista. I appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen here so that we can all see this presentation. Folks, this is a very, very small group, which is wonderful. That means that we can interact. Shannon, good to see you. Laura, Sean, Jen, great of you to be here. Feel free to come on if you like, and so that I know that if any of these points are hitting, they're hitting. The other thing I would say with this size group, folks, this is about you. So please interrupt me all the way through this, and put your questions in the field, or even blurt them out. It might make for an ugly video at the end, but that's okay. The point is for you. I've seen this presentation before. So folks, I always like to start with this. I like to start with the Man in the Arena quote. And my favorite version of this is when Brene Brown gives her 3-minute YouTube video on the Man in the Arena. And, you know, basically, I know from looking at the bios that all of you who are on this call are growing a business, and you are doing the hard work of getting your face bloodied every day. And, you know, the only guarantee when you're in the arena, as Brene Brown says, is that you're going to get your ass kicked. That's it. There's no guarantee of success. There's no guarantee of doing it right. There's no guarantee of jolly pops and rainbows. You're just going to get one lump after the other. That's the only guarantee if you're going to run a business. And yet, I think it is probably one of the most worthwhile and most rewarding endeavors you can go through. Isn't that life? The harder it is, the more rewarding it is. But folks, if you can let me know why you're here. Laura, Sean, Jen, Shannon, why did you decide to dedicate a precious hour of your time to spend it with us today? If you can think that one through, write in the chat, whatever it happens to be, why are you here? Why would you've got an hour. You've got lots of stuff on your list. curious. Christine, you can play along too if you want. Morgan, you can play along if you like as well. You got lots of things you need to do. Thank you, Krista. I'm curious, why would you spend an hour here? Okay. We are growing. Awesome. Learn more about what other businesses are going through and plan for the future. Okay. So 2 on strategic direction and perfect. Okay. Tips to improve the business as we come out through COVID. Perfect. Folks, I appreciate you writing those in. That lets me know you're here and it lets me frame this talk a little bit more. Okay, folks. Krista mentioned a little bit about my bio. Listen, I'm a recovering academic. Currently have majority control in 8 businesses, minority partner in a 9th. We are working with 47 clients right now, everything from one client that is $40 million headed to about $120 million. So we're on a rocket ship, down to a $120,000 cheese factory. Okay, so we've seen the gamut. And what this next hour or this next 40 minutes will do is try to connect it for you. Try and connect some of these bigger pieces on how do I see where my business is headed versus where it is, and how do I start to cut through the noise and do the critical few things that matter. If you don't take anything else away from this talk other than this next line, I think it will help you. The human ability to imagine is infinite. Your time is finite. What you can conceive in your mind, you can achieve, but you can't achieve everything you conceive in your mind. And so it comes down to this process of distilling what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And unfortunately, we are all human, which means that when we get tired, which by the way is at about 9:12 a.m. every day, we default to what we know or what we like, not what we need to do. And so all of us individually and as an organization are constantly trying to make sure we create the environment and the nudges to do the things we need to do versus the things we want to do or can do. Because the things we want to do and can do, we feel good about doing, and yet they don't take us to where we need to go. And I want to separate between that. So the first thing is figure out what it is you're going to do and then create the environment to do it. All right, folks, I work on this almost every day. As Shannon knows from one of the courses she's doing with us, most of my days are spent helping people connect all the things they could do to the critical few they're going to. And this is important because in strategy, it's not about getting it right. It's about being less wrong every quarter. This is why engineers hate strategy. This is why accountants hate strategy. This is why most people hate strategy. Why do they hate strategy? Because they like to be right. And when it comes to strategy, there are too many variables. You can never actually be right. You can only be less wrong. And the more you do strategy, the better you get at it. So most people know strategy as a once a year thing, or they know strategy as a once every 3 to 5 years. What I will say is if you're going to get at this, if you're going to get at this in a way that you're going to be able to execute, you need to do this every 90 days. And every 90 days, you want to get in the room and you want to go, what's 10 years look like? Therefore, what's 1 year look like? How far am I from it? What is the first critical thing we need to do in the next 90 days? What am I going to do in, on, and from a resource standpoint? Okay, now the most important moment, the weekly meeting where you translate intention to action. Don't tell me what's important, show me your calendar. And with your calendar, you'll show me. Now, I go on that rant because as you see on this slide, this is about alignment on the future, choice on the critical bits that need to get done, and then scheduling them to execute. I'm giving you a little bit of a framework here because Safi Bahcall who wrote one of the only 2 books that I suggest on strategy. It's called Loon Shots. He had a wonderful sentence in there. Do you remember when Peter Drucker said, and you probably all heard this at some point in your life, culture eats strategy for breakfast? Safi Bahcall said, that may be so, but structure eats culture for lunch. And what he meant by structure is, when do you meet and what do you discuss and how do you ensure that the structure you're within nudges you to do the things that you need to do that you don't necessarily want to do? Okay, there's nothing sexy about execution. There's a lot of fun in strategy. Okay, folks, I spend my days in alignment, choice, and execution. Alignment on the future, choice on what you're going to do, create the environment to execute it. Only 3 things happen naturally in organizations: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else requires leadership. How are you going to do that? Okay, folks, what we're going to do today, very, very quick review of the principles of performance excellence. I'm going to take a little bit of time to focus on the customer, because everything comes back to what problem are you solving for who. Then we're going to talk about how we take those principles and the customer and translate them into strategy, which, by the way, is how you get over to the other side of COVID. And then I'm going to leave you with the strategic process so that you can do this over and over again on your own. Over and over again on your own. Okay. I love that question, Laura. Having gone through COVID, what the heck's the point of looking at strategy beyond 3 years? Right? And it's a great question. I'm gonna jump into that one right now. Here's the thing. When we work at a 10-year, I didn't say a 10-year plan. I said a 10-year story of where you're headed. I know the compass is pointed north. I don't know where the bogs are or the swamps or the paths or the treacherous points on it. But directionally, I have to have a point I'm chasing. All great organizations need that story. Where are they headed? It creates a tension between where they want to be and where they are. Then I want to translate that down to a 3 and 1 year plan. And you do need a 3-year plan if you're capital intensive or you're going to invest in skills or infrastructure. But you have to be flexible enough to change that plan every 90 days. So here's the difference. The great organizations update and edit that plan every 90 days because the world changes too fast. But they do allow themselves 90-day sprints so they can commit to one action without being paralyzed by all the things they could do. Right? So if you get together every 90 days and go 10-year story, 3-year, 1 year, where are we today? What are we doing in, on, and from a resource standpoint? What's that 90-day sprint? What's the next 4 weeks? Now, I'm going to say that over and over again as we go through this. But yes, I do believe there's extreme value. Here's the other thing. People vastly overestimate what they can do in a year. And they equally, perhaps more so, underestimate what they can do in 10. As we saw with this pandemic, humans have no ability to understand exponential thinking. And yet compounding is the 8th wonder of the world. We know it theoretically, but we don't understand how big of an impact it has. And compounding goes for money, it goes for skills, it goes for marketing, it goes for everything. So you think about the things that you want compounding, think about your own skill sets. How much do you just know now based on having done something and tried to get better at it for the last 7 years? Okay, hope that answered a little bit of what we're talking about here. So, I always love when these things are on video. Okay. For those watching the video replay of this, that was me screwing it up and putting a second tab on there. Folks, who here is familiar with Bonhouses Curve? Shannon will be. Okay. Bonhouses Curve tells you this. Within 20 minutes of this session, 42% of what I said is gone. You've forgotten it. Within 24 hours, 67% is done. Within 31 days, 80% is gone. And after 60 days, you may as well not have been here. So I put this slide up every time for 2 reasons. You may have heard these lessons in the past. If you have, I suggest that you say, what didn't I, you try and focus on what you didn't hear. For those who are here and going through and go, God, I really want to remember that. What was that? See Krista in the chat. What was the name of that book? What was the name of that author? Safi Bacall, Loon Shots. Folks, if there's something out of this that you want to remember, the only way to beat Bonhouses Curve is to write it down and reflect on it. And I didn't say type it. Type it is gone. Typing does not have the same connection to your brain as physically writing something down. I don't know why yet. Maybe we'll evolve to where it does, but today for today, the data says no. So if you want to remember something, write it down. Okay, folks, I always start with this. Our price is going up or down. People look at the price of gas. They're looking at inflation. They're going, the prices are going up generally. And I want to let everybody know that's not the case. The price of everything is headed to zero if over time. We will have blips, but the price of everything's headed to zero over time. And if you need any more proof than this, I'd be shocked. There is more computing power in that tiny little phone that you can't help but look at, probably already 16 times during this presentation, than there was in the first shuttle. Thousands of times more computing power. So when you think about that, I want to go to that phone again. This is a 2011 slide. There is $1 million worth of hardware in your phone in about 1980-ish dollars for free, or not quite free, $60 a month. Folks, the price of everything and the value of everything's headed to zero. The value of every skill set is headed to zero as well. If you ever get a chance to read any of Bernadette Jiwa's small books, I hope that you take the opportunity. She is a wonderful author. They are tiny books and they are beautifully written. She put it this way: what's meaningful today can become meaningless tomorrow, not because it no longer works, but because what people believe and how they think, act, and feel changes. The world's constantly changing. Things like a pandemic just exacerbate pre-existing trends. They create a few new ones as well. We will have a whole legion of golfers now and runners because the only activity you could do during COVID was solo. Exactly. So you'll have a whole bunch more of those. So it diverted some, took them away from group activities and went there. But for the most part, think about all the trends that were accelerating. Digital adoption in all its many forms. That's an easy thing to say, but we're on this Zoom video today. I know everybody's sick of Zoom, but we're here today and able to interact in a meaningful way from a distance in a way that wasn't acceptable pre-pandemic, but was headed there. There were Google Meets and all that kind of fun stuff. But now it's the way, right? So pre-existing trends were accelerating. This is important. What was going on before? What has been accelerated because of this pandemic? What does that mean for your customers? What savings could I now have in the way I deliver my work because of what's accepted, right? Okay, folks, if you ever need to question the speed of change, I just go back and look at these businesses. Sears owned Christmas. They used to send out that wish book, you would circle it. And over time, they decided that the wish book cost too much money and they didn't migrate online quick enough and the world passed them by. They sold their real estate assets for 10 cents on the dollar. Kodak invented the digital camera and buried it in the basement because the profits on film were too good. How'd that work out? Not so well. I don't know if anybody saw during the Trump years, Kodak had a big spike in their share price because they were going to become a pharmaceutical company overnight. That was interesting. Blockbuster, they turned down buying Netflix. You can now stay in the last Blockbuster in Portland, Oregon as an Airbnb. And you can watch a documentary of the last Blockbuster that did exist in Alaska on Netflix. Rather prophetic. Okay, so, and BlackBerry. BlackBerry taught the world to type with their thumbs. I was in Waterloo when they went from 4% of the market to 40%, and then they came crashing down. Folks, irrelevance happens when the speed of change outside an organization is greater than the speed of change inside an organization. You all run a business. What I want you to hear loud and clear is whatever value prop you offer to the world needs to be secondary to your ability to change. Doesn't matter what you're offering. You know, Shannon's got an accounting firm. They offer accounting services, but we all know where a bunch of this is headed. The AI is not quite there yet, but it's close. It's close, right? Like all this stuff is coming down the pipe. So are you going to be leading the charge with it and a fast follower with changes, which requires you to be able to change, or are you going to hold on to the way you're doing it today? And there's all different versions of that in the business community. And let me tell you, unfortunately, not very many of us are fine wine. We don't age well. Our value props don't age well. And even fine wine turns to vinegar after a while. Here's the sad reality. Only 10% of change succeeds, and the only constant is change. Out of the original Fortune 500 list, a list put together in 1955, less than 9% of companies remain in the Fortune 500. It wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago. And you think the rest of them said, I can't wait to get out of the Fortune 500 and be a terrible company? No. Nobody wanted it, but that's where it went, right? Okay, folks, good strategy is nothing more than the ability to call your shot in the future and then pilot a potential change. You pilot big enough to learn, but small enough that it doesn't ruin your organization. And you go pilot by pilot. And as soon as you find the ones that win, you scale those. And that's how the great organizations do it. Jim Collins will call it shooting, he'll say shooting bullets before cannonballs. Okay, so call your shot, pilot small, find what wins, move the organization there. Being able to change your organization is not a luxury, it's a necessity, because what the customer values will change and the way you can deliver that value will change. Okay. Couple core principles to keep in mind. Whenever you're going to run an organization, you better have a bigger why, start with why, and you better clearly understand what problem you solve for who. So between 1972 and 2002, this company would have given you the highest return. I asked people to guess. Lots of people put things in the chat. If you're still with us, if you're still hanging on here, put your guess in, except for Shannon. You can't put your guess in here because you know the answer. Between 1972 and 2002, this company would have given you Apple. Good guess. Most people forget that in 1997, Apple had 6 weeks of cash. The front of every newspaper said you better sell it. And actually, Apple took off like crazy post iPod. Apple's a good guess, and if we had put this date range out another 20 years, you'd probably be right. Any other guesses? This is really just my test to see if anybody's still awake. We're too polite in Canada. Blockbuster. Yeah, of course, Drew. Well played. Well played. Okay, a lot of people guess 3M. A lot of people guess Coke, IBM. Those are all good guesses. It was a little tiny airline company. This is in an industry where 82% of their competition went out of business. And they were the highest performing company between 72 and 2002, judged by the stock market, not judged by some sort of weird metric that we don't know. Okay. And they clearly understood why they existed and they can articulate it. In Jim Collins' famous version of the hedgehog, they can articulate it in 3 sentences. They exist to democratize the skies. They're the best in the world at the 1-hour flight. And they knew the financial return that made it sustainable. It was their North Star. We're going to talk a little bit later about Best Buy. Every great organization starts with their North Star, and they talk about the impact they want to have on this world and the problem they want to solve. Democratize the skies, the 1-hour flight. And we work with organizations to get this clear. The clearer this is, the easier it is to make good strategic choice. The more ambiguous this is. You ever seen those mission statements that are 389 lines long? They basically say we do everything. Yeah. How do you get better in an organization like that? You can't, right? So why do you exist? What are you the best in the world at? What are you going to continue to be the best in the world at? Can you say it in 3 lines? Right? That's the challenge that I would have for you. And you're going, well, I wanted to talk about how to get better after COVID. I want to get grounded in why you exist, what impact you want to have, what problem you solve, what the value of solving that problem is for who. I say this over and over again. Then I ask this question, what's the most valuable asset you have? Most people will talk about people at this point. And I will bring up the number one HR guru in the world, Dave Ulrich, who says, if you don't have this, you don't need any people. If you don't have a customer paying you $1, you don't need any people because you can't afford to pay them and then they won't stay around. So understand why you exist and what problem you solve. Then you understand what capabilities you need to solve that problem. Then you understand what competencies you need and what kind of people you need. And then you make the most important decision your micro business will ever make. Who you choose to join you on this journey. Because when you're a small and micro business, one person, one bad hire can upset the apple cart. And when I say a bad hire, I don't mean a bad person. I mean a bad fit. I don't actually believe there are bad people. There are very few people who go, I can't wait to show up late, do a shitty job, leave early, and brag about what I didn't do. It just doesn't happen. But there are lots of times where we have the wrong fit. Lots of times where we have the wrong fit. Okay. Great organizations understand themselves outside in from the customer. Amazon actually has a red chair in any of their important boardrooms. And when Shannon and I get in a fight, John forces us to stare at the red chair and go, Matt and Shannon, solve that problem for the customer. I want you to think about the dynamic change there. Now it's not Shannon and I staring at each other trying to be right. It's now Shannon and I together trying to get it right for the customer. This is how all debates are solved in high-performing organizations. People working together, getting it right for the customer so that when they get it right, they create value and have the impact in the world that they want to have. That customer is your number one asset. And in order to understand who your customer is, folks, you don't just do the thing you do. I hate when people describe to me their business by who they are. I'm an accountant who does accounting. No, you aren't. You are ensuring that people understand the complication of their financial world and that they file their taxes on time and don't get in a pile of shit. And there are different problems to solve within there at different levels. Don't describe it from the thing you do. Describe it from the problem you're solving for who, which will force you to say, should we be solving that problem? Right? Okay, folks, I always bring up this because I was giving this presentation in Calgary, a variation of this presentation, and a guy who sat around the boardroom table when they made the decision at V8 to go to 50 SKUs of juice. He sat there and they made that decision because V8 thought it made juice. And they made the decision to make more kinds of juice. I normally ask in a bigger group, like, who likes V8? And there's always one, and I always go like, why? It tastes gross, right? You don't drink V8 because it tastes good. Why do you, if you're managed to get it down your gullet, why are you drinking it? I love my V8. There's Krista. Yeah. But why do you drink it, Krista? It can't be the taste. It can't be the taste. It's healthy. The problem V8 solves is right there. It's good mix. That's exactly it. Those are the two things that always come up. The third one that I've heard actually is it's a good hangover. So two of them have to deal with alcohol. And the third one, which is the reason why most people buy it, is it has a portion of vegetables. The problem that V8 solves is increasing your vegetable quotient for the day. They thought they made juice. And so they made 55 different kinds of juice. Here's why this is so important. And here's why I'm stopping on this. If they had been around that strategy table and they had asked, what problem do we solve for who? They would have said, we solve the problem of vegetable quotient per day or vegetable servings per day. And they probably would have found other ways to solve that problem for healthy people. Instead, they made 50 different versions of SKUs. And you know what happened to V8? It went from the vegetable aisle on an end cap to the juice aisle. And now it's in the middle in this juice aisle. And you're like, oh my God. And I don't know which one have high fructose in it, which is the opposite of healthy. And which one has sugar in it. And which one actually still I can go get the original. Okay, they have confused their customer, and then they got out of the area where they needed to be seen. And now, you know what? With 50 plus SKUs, they make less revenue and way less gross margin than they have with one type of product. And I bring this up because, folks, people make this mistake all the time when they describe it from what they do. They stare at the wrong things. They make the wrong decisions on what to improve. What problem is being solved? If you can't describe that, don't go to making your business better yet. Don't do it. You know what's problems being solved here? It's a drill. Come on, what when you buy a drill, what do you want? How do you grow with it? I love this. How do you grow? There it is. You want a hole in the wall, Morgan. And Jen, I appreciate that question. How do you grow without diversifying? Pretty easy. You go and you say, what problem do I solve for who? What's the value of solving it? You then understand how big your market is. What normally happens is people are trying to solve too many problems for too many people. I once worked with a gym. They did $250,000 of revenue and they had 8 value streams. They had 8 businesses within there. They were a gym so they said, well, we're a boxing gym, so we do boxing lessons. And then they went, well, but we could open the gym up for gym hours. So we're going to have gym hours. And then they said, well, we're also going to do group classes. And of the group classes, they said, you know what, we're actually going to do personal training as well. And then somebody said, I really like being here. You should have swag. So then they started buying swag. Swag's one thing, at least shirts stay. But then somebody said, I'd like a smoothie after my boxing. And then they started making smoothies and had health bars. And then they went, well, we could get into so they had a whole food on protein area. And then 2 of the parents said, I wish I had a place to send my kids. And so they created a kids camp. Folks, $258,000 of revenue, and they had 8 businesses within it. Every one of them because they had the capability to do it. When we got to this, we realized there's only 2 value streams that were making money. Their group lessons and their personal training. And the number one of that was their personal training. But the guy was a former world #1 boxer. What do you think he wanted to do? He wanted to train elite boxing athletes. Guess what the market was for elite boxing? Not much. So he had to make a decision on whether he wanted a hobby or a business, because the market will start to tell you. Now, he ended up growing the business. It's a good story. Ended up growing the business, understanding what he needed to, with 2 core value streams: the fitness classes and the personal training. And when that got up to speed, he was able to take the profits from that business and do his passion. Train high-end boxers. Great. But he got it sorted. So you asked, how do you grow without diversifying? First, I want you to grow from the core. And then from the core, I want you to decide whatever one step you might want to do. But most people are nowhere near the size they could be just from the core, from their core business. They're caught doing a whole bunch of things on the edges, because all great entrepreneurs go, yes, and. Yep, I can do that and I'll figure it out. And then all of a sudden they're spending 50% of their time on stuff that they're not really that good at, don't really like, and doesn't make them that much money. And I see it all the time. Instead of going, you know what, I'm going to have the discipline to say no to that client base. Okay, folks, back to that drill. When I buy a drill, I want a hole in the wall. And do you know that over 80% of people who buy a drill use it mostly to hang pictures? And there was some smart engineer who realized that, and you can buy those little doohickeys now where you can push them into drywall with your thumb, and they go in and up and they hang. Now you don't need to buy a drill. You just need to buy the doohickeys. I wish I knew what they were called. I should learn what they're called. But we've all seen them. Okay. What problem are you solving for who? What problem are you solving? Thank you, Krista. Monkey hooks. Hopefully I don't forget that. That's a good enough name there, folks. And there's a little bit of this, right? What is the value of solving that problem? Do you sell on time, quality, and cost? Do you solve a problem and then charge for it? Are you the #1 choice? Why are they choosing you? And I'm droning on a bit here on this one because I don't want to go make decisions until I can articulate this, and so few can. And I'm going to give you one more tool to start to really articulate this. Francis Fry and Ann Morris have written two of the most important books in the last decade. One is called Uncommon Service, and that's about your business. And another one is called Unleashed, and that's about your leadership. I won't get into Unleashed today, but if you have 20 minutes after this talk and you go look up Francis Fry and Unleashed, it is the single best talk I've ever seen on trust, on building trust as a leader. And you need to do that if you're going to lead. Back to this, uncommon service in your business. To achieve service excellence, you must underperform in strategic ways. What? What do you underperform? What are you talking about? Okay, this is what she's talking about. What are you terrible at in the service of great? If you can't tell me that, I'm scared for your business. What are you terrible at in the service of great? And they will go and they will build out an attribute map. Now, don't get blown away by this thing, but we're back to Southwest here. Look on the left. All the things that matter in the airline industry. Low prices, friendly service, frequent departures, on-time arrivals, fast transport, convenient airports, extensive networks, onboard amenities. Those are basically the things that matter. And it's even beyond airlines. It's just travel. There's the 5 to 7 things. If you went in your business, there would be 5 to 7 things that matter in your type of business. And then along the bottom, you could talk about the relative performance. Now, if you look at Southwest, they're the solid line. If you follow that up, I'll put my cursor over here. If you follow that up, they're the solid line. Look at this. They are absolutely horrific at onboard amenities. They don't care about it. Someone comes up and says, hey, we should make the salad better. They go, I don't care. No, we're not making the salad better. We don't have salads. Onboard amenity, extensive network, and convenient airports. They don't care. You want to go to Boston? Fly into Manchester. 45 minutes outside, they don't care. Because they are terrible at onboard amenities, extensive networks, and convenient airports. In the service of being great at fast transports, on-time arrival, frequent departures, friendly service, and low prices. That's how you win, folks. You can't win being everything to everyone. Why do you exist? What impact do you want to have? What problem are you solving for who? What are you terrible at in the service of great? This goes for chambers as well. I think about all the different things they could do, right? Are they the best at shared services? Are they the best at policy advocacy? Are they the best at putting network events on and growing the business community? What are they going to be the best at? Are they the best at education components, right? Not-for-profits face this in an even bigger way, and they have a harder time making decisions because all 4 of those are worthy pursuits. But I have a hard time doing all 4 of them really well. Okay. If you're going to do this on your own, you take a look at it and you go, what are the attributes? What's the relative performance? You draw your own map. You compare it to your competition. It's a really good way to understand if you've actually articulated your message on what problem you're solving for who. Okay, folks, you'll have access to all these slides. If you send me an email after this, I'll send them out to you. But folks, what problem do you solve for who? What is the value? What are you terrible at in the service of great? I say it over and over again because the human capacity to imagine is infinite. Your time is finite. You have to make choices. Doing good strategy is about flexing the muscle of choice. Flexing the muscle of choice in a world of abundance is really hard. We all suffer from FOMO. I would suggest that you put a new word in your lovely little lexicon. I would suggest you put JOMO in, the joy of missing out. Right? Because if you're going to do strategy, you're going to say no to way more than you're going to say yes to. Okay. Customer is the number one asset. The second thing that I always make sure is now that you understand what value you deliver for who, you need to understand the capabilities. Right? And a company has 5 core capabilities. They can market, they can sell. So they can get the right eyeballs, they can convert those eyeballs. They then have on the delivery side, they can do the job that they sold and they can schedule all the jobs they sold to get them all done in time. Do the single bit, put the roof on, schedule all the roofs. So those are the 4 capabilities that any smaller micro business needs to understand how good they are. Can I attract the right eyeballs? Can I convert them to my service? Can I do the job I promised? And can I schedule all the jobs? Marketing, sales, scheduling, delivery. The 5th one, normally for a company is around the enabling bit and HR. Can I find the right people to bring on this journey? Can I bring them on and can I keep them engaged? Folks, when it all goes wrong, most people blame people. And in a world of service and knowledge, we see people, so we blame them. The reality is high-performing organizations blame how, not who. If you ever catch yourself blaming who, you have a 4% chance of being right. I don't like your odds. Now, you're human, so you're going to fall to that. The key is not that I'm blaming who, it's how quickly can I move from who to how. And most people can't see the processes, but you need to be able to blame process in order to get better. Blame the capability. Final bit. In organizations, there are renters and owners. We need, as leaders, to create the environment for owners. How do we do that? We engage people in helping us understand what's not going well every day by commenting on the process of what could be better so that we can fix that, so we can deliver more value to our customer. Purpose, process, people. Okay, how does it all come together? Lines and boxes. Purpose, process, people. I go to work in the business and on the business. You've probably heard in or on before. But most people don't understand what it is to truly work on the business. I'm going to go do more sales. That's working on the business. No, it's not. That's using your sales process and focusing your time working in the business. If you're going to work on the business, you actually change form, fit, or function of how you deliver something in the business, which means it's like a home renovation. Between 1% done and 99% done, it is all cost and no value. Only when the kitchen is renovated does it provide value to you, because you can actually host people. On work is really hard to do. On work is changing the process of the organization. It's changing habits. Folks, January 17th every year is Quitters Day. That is the day on Strava where all the enthusiasm of New Year, New Me drops off a cliff. One year it was the 14th, last year it was the 17th. They actually measure it. All these people are super excited, then it drops off a cliff. Folks, humans are not real good at change. And you know why they're not real good at change? Is they pick too much. They don't realize how hard it is to change a habit, and they don't put the work in to fully change and anchor the habit. When you're going to work on the business, you're changing an organizational habit so that it performs faster, better, with less resources in the business for you. Okay. I'm going to jump into this very, very quickly in the next 6 minutes, and then we're done. Strategy provides you focus, your purpose. Your structure, the calendar, provides you the discipline of the organization. And the way you execute every day in the business provides today's value. And the way you capture and decide what you're going to make better provides tomorrow's value, improvement and innovation. You have the very difficult decision as a leader of deciding what you're going to be in the future versus what you are today, therefore what needs to change, and how you're going to get at changing that, whether it's going to be in focus or whether you're actually going to change a habit to do that. What are you going to do? Good strategy requires focus. This is the second book on strategy that I recommend. There are hundreds written on it. There are only 2 that are worth it. This one by Richard Rummelt, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, always makes me laugh when I see the title, because he said strategy is so terribly done, he actually named his book in a way of Good Dog, Bad Dog. Good strategy, bad strategy. One of my favorite quotes in there is that the #1 reason why doing good strategy works is because no one else does it. And they don't expect you to do it either. Laura, when I talk about technology, I'm glad that you brought that up. Technology is an incredible enabler to a process. So it might be, you might have a scheduling software that helps you schedule better. You might have a CRM software that helps you sell better, but it is an enabler to a process. It is not a process on its own. So it is part, if I'm going to improve form, fit, or function of my sales process, I may choose as part of that to look at a technology in the improvement phase, which might be Salesforce. So that's where technology fits in, but it is a very important enabler, Laura, very important one. Okay, good strategy is the exception. The organizations in the Fortune 500 that have remained, all of them still solve the same problem today, but they don't solve it with the same solution. They've changed their solution to that problem over time. And they know how to do this. They know how to anchor this. Procter & Gamble is one of the original in the Fortune 500. It remains there today. My father had the good fortune of working with them in the early 80s, and most of our methodological understanding of how to do this came from his early training and has been adapted since then. Right? This isn't just something we made up. This is something we've used and comes from the best organizations. The thing about P&G too is P&G builds leaders. And if you look all across the US and Canada and you look at who are running organizations, there is a disproportionate number of them that came out of the P&G HR factory, if you will. Okay, I'm going to quickly give you the story of Best Buy because that company was left for dead in 2012. It was going to get run over by the Amazons of the world. It was toast. This is what it looked like. Retail was dead. Amazon was going to take it over. Its stock was at $12. The company was losing money every month and frustrated employees with very, very high turnover. It's a high turnover game anyway, but they were at greater than 50%. This was 2012. Hubert Jolly took over as CEO. He had never been in CPG, never been in consumer, and he largely did the same thing that we just talked about. Why do you exist? What problem do you solve for who? What capabilities must we have to solve that problem? And how do we go about executing improvement in that? In 2019, 7 years later, from 14 to 19, they had 5 consecutive years of sales growth. Stock prices up over 87. It's over $122 today. All the businesses that were supposed to eat them have mini stores within. And employee turnover decreased by over 20%. In a very transient game, they are among the lowest of turnover in terms of retail. How did they do this? They went through a session much like this. Hubert Jolly followed a noble purpose, and they came with their purpose to enrich lives through technology. They wanted to do that in entertainment, productivity, communication, food security, and health and wellness. Those are the areas, the verticals they were going to do it in. The store stays. It was a tactile place where people could touch and feel tech. They went from selling largely entertainment to becoming an important part of med tech, an important part of smart appliances, the Geek Squad was born. All of this was born. And once you set your purpose right, the ideas that will help you to the future are there. They're there in spades. And then they drove waste out of the system. They had a return center that absolutely, they had the policy. Everything must go back to the return center. So they would actually spend upwards of $50 making sure a single pen got back to the return center only to be thrown out. That's what happens when you have policies instead of principles. That's what happens when you have rules instead of a purpose-driven organization. Corey Berry took over in 2019. She's since taken the stock from $87 to $122. The purpose remains the same. How they execute that gets better every day. They get 1% better in every area. They do it because they understand why they exist, what problem they solve for who. They understand the capabilities, and they're making those better all over the place. If you want to read this story, it's an incredible story. The Heart of Business by Hubert Jolly, probably one of the single best books I've read on turnarounds, because he did the exact opposite of what you would expect. Most CEOs who came in would cut to the core, cut stores, and they try to cut their way to prosperity. He didn't. He turned it around by understanding why they existed, what problem they solved for who, and then getting at rebuilding those capabilities. Folks, if you're going to do this well, we need to have alignment on where we're headed. You need to sequence the things you're going to do. You need to choose the improvement path, and you need to commit to the actions. Now, in this slide deck, you'll have a strategic process that'll lay out for you how you do it if you want it. Good strategy is not a series of goals. It's not a mishmash of motivational slogans. It doesn't skip over details. It doesn't avoid conflict and abrasion. In fact, it promotes it. It understands that good ideas come on the back of 5 or 6 bad ones. It provides a safe place to have that conversation. It does not accommodate conflicting demands and interests. So it's not a strategy that says 7 things that are contradictory. And it does not allocate resources to stuff that doesn't matter. It clarifies the problem, it aligns, it forces you to make choice, and it paves the way to execute that choice so there's no noise. So I would ask you, as we wind this down, what's the number one constraint you have? Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it scheduling? Is it quality? Is it HR? Where is it? You know that we have, well, you probably don't know. We have taken the work we've done and we deliver it in two ways. We have a strategic cohort that we work with, and we have a number of those cohorts. Shannon's actually part of one of them. So if you want an opinion outside of this, talk to Shannon. We also have developed Simply Work so that those core constraints, for a very, 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 very easy price, can be gotten. Now, the fun part is if you're on this one today and you want one of those courses, it's yours for free, just so that you can actually get at your constraint. I know I put 7 in there. I wasn't supposed to put 7. There's not even 7 companies on here, Krista. Have some fun with it. All right, 5 minutes left. Started 5 minutes late, but good to go. Krista, I'll open it up to you.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you so much. That was a really great presentation. And I think the most important thing it did is make everybody think about how they want to go forward. A few people sent me questions separately, but I see Laura has put a question in the chat, which is, where does technology fit into performance management?
Yeah, and that's one that I quickly addressed as we were going through there, just as it is never the improvement. It is always an enabler to the improvement. Technology is a wonderful thing. If you're headed towards the ditch, all technology does is send you there faster. Right? So what process are you going to fix? How do you make that process better? And then how do you enable that with technology? The danger is people invest in Salesforce. Nothing wrong with Salesforce. It just doesn't fit the way they're doing sales today. And then they've got garbage in the system, and then they're not benefiting from the technology, and it's gross. So fix the process, then grab the technology. Morgan?
So I had someone send me a question that it's a hard market for hiring, and that if your number one focus is your sales and your customer, how do you keep your employees feeling that they're important, they're valued, and keep them on board?
I love it. I love it. So purpose, process, people. People are engaged day in and day out by delivering value and feeling like they have. So how are you showing that to people every day? How are you connecting them to purpose? How are you acknowledging and celebrating the value we're co-creating? And how are you engaging them in making the way we do things better? If you do that, you should actually drive up gross margin per week that you're making, and you should be able to pay the highest wages in your industry as well, by the way. Can't get there right away, but that when you look at all these top performers, you look at Southwest, you look at Costco, you look at all those, there's a funny thing about them. They're the best in the industry. They have the highest customer satisfaction. They have the best financial return, and they're the hardest to get a job with, and they pay the best. It's not like they do one of it the best. They generally do all of it the best, with the exception of one or two behemoths. If we weren't recording, I may make a reference to Amazon here. They're not, but you know, hey, Jeff, please leave me alone if you see this. Okay.
So I have one more question that was sent to me, and I'm told there's a hand raised. So I'm going to ask this last question. Morgan's going to ask a question, and then we're going to say farewell. So
Perfect.
My question that was sent to me was, and I can relate to this with the chamber, if you've determined what is your why, but then a great opportunity comes along, what do you do? And from a chamber perspective, I would say rapid testing.
Yeah. So there's the first thing is, does it get into the rapid testing phase? So in the mergers and acquisitions world, people will say the best deals are the ones you don't do. You will be defined by what you say no to, not what you say yes to. And what I would say first is, if you get a wonderful opportunity, are you willing? And listen, good opportunities don't come when you want them to. They come out of the blue at you. The mistake people make is they don't look at the whole picture before they make the decision on the part. So if a big opportunity comes your way and you're seriously considering it, get back in the room. Look at the whole picture. Ask yourself the bigger questions, because people create false binaries. I can do this or this. Maybe we have the resources to do both. Maybe we don't. Maybe this takes us too far into being another business. This happens in not-for-profit all the time. A big grant comes and they have to run after it. And you go, ooh, do I really want to do that? Right? So I would say, does it pass the yes, no? Does it fit into the whole part whole? And if it does, then how small can you go to test it to see if you truly want it?
Yeah, and I think maybe for us at the chamber, deciding to go into providing rapid tests to our members and to non-members, not-for-profits and small businesses probably was not so much departing from our why, but understanding how that actually fit into our why.
100%. And you had an important role in doing that. And so the Halifax Chamber did it here in Halifax as well. I'm sitting in Halifax today. And what I would say is that there's a couple chambers that took the leading role of understanding that enabling businesses meant something totally different under pandemic conditions, right? And you were, I say this publicly, I say it all over the place. The Fredericton Chamber was the first one out of the gate, providing meaningful updates at the right cadence to give everybody a sense of stability when they needed it most. And then when they didn't need it anymore, you went back to the once a week, and then you went back to the once a month. Right. But so you have to move to your environment. Right.
All right. I understand Morgan's hand is raised. I'm going to tell him to turn the mic on and go ahead, and then we're going to close things up.
Oh, you're on mute still. The words of 2020 and 2021.
That was not me. Someone did that to me.
Yeah, of course.
I'm interested in the relationship, I guess, between culture, structure, and strategy.
Yep.
Thinking about the chamber, I feel like the structure is part of what creates the culture, and maybe less so the strategy, but just curious on your thoughts on that in general.
I'm glad you brought that up. Folks, strategy tells us where we're headed and what we're going to do to get there. Structure provides the cadence of meetings and the way we're going to have those meetings. Culture is the magic that gets enabled by people who are excited about where you're going and are able to benefit from how you're doing it to get there, right? And I don't, when somebody asks me what's more important, it's a false question. If you don't have a future state that people are excited about, it's really hard to build a good culture, because there's only so many beer nights you can do or fall backwards into each other's arms where you're not building something where you don't get excited, right? Like that stuff only works for a little bit. And then if you have a great place you're going and you have people who are super excited about it, but you have no way to bring it together and tangibly execute, it falls apart because people get frustrated. And this deeply passionate people are really excited going this way, and they're really excited telling you you're failing too. So emotion is a double-edged sword, right? So that's how I would say they fit together. The strategy tells you where we're headed and how we're going to do it. The structure brings people together in the right ways, and both of those allow you to have a great culture.
Matt, thank you so much for your presentation today. Thanks for taking questions at the end. We will be providing the recording of this to members who were not able to attend that had hoped to, and we'll be sharing it on our social media. So thanks again. And we look forward to implementing some of the great advice that you've given us, figuring out, making sure we understand our why, our customer focus, and really how we're going to get there, and what is it that we're the best in the world at. So that's your question to one of your questions to take home today. And Matt, thanks again. And we'll see everybody again soon, hopefully sometime soon in person. Thanks, everyone.
Agreed. See ya.